Hello, and once again we have a reflection here from the Lance. Yesterday I had a wee trip down memory lane. I actually put on Led Zeppelin number 3, the album, and it was brilliant listening to that music again, and it reminded me of 50 years ago when it first came out. I was 15 and a group of friends and myself were up in a friend's bedroom listening to this in an old record player, which was essentially a box with a turntable and this old scratchy sounding record, and we're all playing air guitar to it. Great times. Well, of course, 50 years sounds a long time, but then that's nothing compared to the songbook of ancient Israel, the Psalms. And last week we were looking at Psalm 23, and I thought today, or this week anyway, we shall continue having a wee look at the Psalms. And I'm going to start at the beginning, Psalm number 1. And here's the first verse of Psalm 1. Blessed is the person who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. Gosh, that sounds serious stuff, doesn't it? And of course, as we read the psalm, we realise it's like there's two rivers. There's the river of evil and the river of righteousness. And if we get caught up in either of these rivers, we can get carried deeper and deeper and immersed into the direction that these rivers are going in. Notice the three verbs: walk, stand, and sit. And there's a dynamism here. It's almost as though it's focusing more intensely as we go through that verse. Because walking in the way of evil, well, we could be at the edge of the crowd as we're carried along. But then standing in the midst of it, centre point, it goes deeper. And then sitting within the fellowship of that which is godless and against everything that God's kingdom stands for. Now, this sounds heavy stuff. Is this not an academic issue? Have we not moved on? Is it dangerous to have a judgmental attitude? Well, it depends what we're talking about. Imagine living in the deep south of America, southern states, at the time of civil rights. It was a deeply religious culture in America, and yet terrible racism towards the African Americans. One of my professors when I was at university told a story of a friend of his who was a Church of Scotland minister who moved to the States and to one of the southern states and was a minister there. And some black activists came along, civil rights workers, to join the congregation, because the congregations were segregated, as was everything else in the south. And the white elders took the communion elements round the congregation, and they served everyone except the African Americans who were sitting near the front. They then returned to the communion table. The minister got up, took the bread, took the wine, went down and served the African Americans. Needless to say, he was removed from his post. He lost that job. I can't remember how the story ended, whether he stayed in the States and went to another church or whether he came home. Or think of what it was like to be in Germany during the time of the Nazis. Again, a deeply religious culture. Strong Roman Catholic Church, and then the Lutheran Church, the Protestant Church, was very, very strong. But in the midst of all the anti-Semitism, it was a minority of voices who stood out against that and were heard, because it's very hard to go against the flow. It's very easy to get caught up, to walk, then to be standing, and then to be sitting in the middle of evil. So these are big issues. And think of this pandemic. We have witnessed in these last weeks the worst of human behaviour, but also the best of human behaviour. And thankfully, the best seems to be in the majority. But there's now concerns that people are beginning to break the lockdown requirements, and that trickle could become a flood, because what happens is, oh, well, if they're getting away with it, why can't we? If they're pushing the boundaries there, why can't we? It's almost like a herd instinct to continue to do things and to follow on. So the image here of the two rivers, the flow, I think we can get caught up. It's very important to realise that our lives can be influenced so much by the culture around us and by other people. So today, let's remind ourselves that we need to watch our steps, we need to guard our hearts, and we need to cultivate goodness. Now, those of you who have been spending some time in your gardens will know that it takes time and effort to cultivate things. So too with spiritual values. It just doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes people say that human beings are naturally evil and they have to work at being good. Other people say, no, they're naturally good, just every now and then they're evil. Well, I think the scriptures would say it's a mixture of both, but it's what we cultivate. As someone once said, it's like having two dogs fighting inside him. And somebody said, so which one wins? The one I feed the most. Do we feed the good part of us, or do we feed the not so good part? These are big things. And this week, let's think about that. Where are we in relation to God's path? Thank you for listening. May God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow.